give it half a minute. Unless YouTube will be complaining. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Governor's Resource meeting for Thursday, the 17th of March, St Patrick's Day. Fire regulations, there's no notification of any evacuation or drill, so if you hear the alarms go down, please make your way up to the car park. We'll go to the main agenda. And the first item on the agenda, apologies and substitutes. Tell me.
Yes, Chair. So we've received apologies from Councillor Swindle, Councillor Archer, Councillor Mrs Morley and Councillor Hobson. And we've also had apologies from the auditors, Gavin Barker and John Presley.
Roger. We move on to item number 2, approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. And a second for that. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Public participation, have any? What's he telling me? It was unanimous. Oh, sorry. On the minutes? I beg your pardon. Can I have the vote again then? Sorry. Okay. No, abstention, yeah. Thank you very much. Oh. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. Full vote, yeah. Yeah, yeah, do it.
Sorry, Chair, just to take over. So we've had the vote for. Councillor Allison hasn't voted in favour of the minutes. So is anyone against these minutes? Thank you very much, Councillor Allison.
Sorry.
If there's something wrong or contested within the minutes, is this not the time to allow somebody to speak and clarify that?
Yeah, can do, yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah, so on the vote that was recorded for the fees and charges, I abstained from that vote and it's down as resolved as unanimous, so they're incorrect.
Okay. We'll note that, yes. Thank you, Councillor Allison.
Thank you, Chair. We'll get those. Are you happy with that amendment for the minutes to be signed?
Yeah,
thank you very much, Chair.
No speakers, Chair. No, we've received no questions, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. As you heard earlier, the external auditors unfortunately can't be here tonight as they had prior engagements. So I'll try to answer any questions that members have got on this report. Mazars have issued their audit report. This is the final report associated with the 2020-21 financial year. You might remember that when they reported in November, they said they hadn't been able to complete the value for money assessment. That's now been completed, and I'm pleased to say it identified no significant weaknesses in our arrangements, and there are no recommendations arising. The report that they've issued also says that there was no requirement for a report in the public interest, and they've no statutory recommendations to council. The other point that arises from their report is in relation to the fee increase. The total fees in respect of the 2021 accounts are £43,897. This is £8,500 more than we have in our revised budget. The extra fees relate to additional work. There's £6,000 extra in respect of the new method of assessing value for money arrangements, and there's £2,500 in respect of work relating to new requirements for accounting estimates. So both of those items of work have come along since the contract was put in place, and they did require extra resources. I can tell you that the value for money assessment was based on a very lengthy questionnaire that I had to complete, so I can understand that it would have taken them a while to assess it. The fees are subject to the approval of public sector auditing appointments. They're the PSAA who manage the contract for the work. And because we haven't got sufficient budget, the recommendation is that it be referred to council for a supplementary revenue estimate. Thank you.
Councillor Purdy.
Well, we could make a comment, but I presume the National Audit Office is possibly short-staffed, like a lot of other organisations, and has other things to deal with. But clearly the auditors can't do the work until they get the framework against which to measure these things. They don't have any material effect. The whole of government's accounts is quite consuming. I'm not even sure that we've had the forms to submit our whole of government account entry. So basically what this is, it's an extract from our financial statement that goes off to government, so they can then merge them all together and create accounts for public sector PLC. So they don't have any impact on our services at all. It's just a method of reporting. The certificate's just a sort of rubber stamping to endorse the end of the process.
Councillor Ratcliffe.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have read the detail of this letter from Mazars, and as usual, it does give us a great deal of faith in the resilience of our finances, etc. So I've no specific detailed questions to make on that, because I think the outcomes are well explained in your report, Karen, and I don't think there's anything for us to question as such. But I want to ask you a general question, if I may. Clearly, this was an audit report for the year ended 31st of March 2021. It's almost 2022, end of March. I am assuming that this was because of unforeseen circumstances during these last year, etc. But can I assume that the audit for 2022 will be conducted and available much sooner?
I think the answer to that lies in the fact that the government has extended the deadline again. So the deadline for the accounts has been extended, and the deadline for the audit has also been extended for the coming year. The deadline for 2021 that we've just been looking at was extended to the end of November. I think, and I'm not sure, but I think the audit deadline for the 21-2 accounts is the end of September. So you should be getting them a bit sooner.
I mean, it's just a personal. I think a 12-month delay is not something I would be happy about on a continuing basis.
No, I agree. I think it was the situation from the pandemic. And in addition to that, the value for money assessment, as I mentioned, required me to complete a detailed questionnaire, and I didn't have time to do that until early January.
Councillor Fletcher.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, when you read this report, it's much the same as we've had year on year. And that is pretty good because we know that things are stable. And when you read comments like one-off, the resilience of not relying on one-off resilience from the budget and from reserves, it means that we've got our budgeting process about right. Just two quick questions. One was about budget managers, and I just couldn't work out whether they are actually within the finance team or dedicated within the department itself, and the training that they are given. I wondered how often that would be. And the other little niggly thought is, we all talk about significant differences, but how do we arrive? How do we arrive from a medium risk to a significant risk? Is it monetary, or is it gauged on something else?
Okay. So on the first of those, about budget managers, I'm not sure which exact part of the report that you're referring to, but I can tell you that in general, we have, obviously we've got accountants in the finance team, and each accountant has a set number of departments that they look after, so they're nominated to the departments. And then within those departments, there are budget holders. So, for example, within Ashley Watt's department, he's a budget holder, so Sam Grisman, and so is Vicky Hadfield, and so on. And there'll be someone an accountant in the finance team will work with those to give them the support that they need. So they have regular meetings to give support. We've increased the frequency and improved the format of the monthly reports that they've sent. And what we used to do, but that has not been done in the last couple of years, and that I'm trying to raise again, is we used to do annual budget holder training around about every September. So I'm hoping to get that reinstated for this year. The risks. So the council has a risk scoring methodology that's set out. The one that, and I based the financial risks on that. So the financial risks, the scoring methodology says that up to, I think it's £100,000. Let me just double check. Oh, I have to look at this one. I have it written in my book. Yeah, up to £50,000 is low risk. 50 to £250,000 is medium risk, and over £250,000 is high risk. Those are the financial ones. For a lot of things, we then combine the financial score with the likelihood score to create a combined risk score. But for the financial risk assessments that I do, I purely look at finance and not the likelihood. Yeah.
Councillor Allen, did I miss your hand? Did I miss your hand? You want to speak? Yeah. Thank you. I was looking at Steve actually, not looking over there. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I may be misunderstanding the information that you provide to the external auditors, but when I saw value for money arrangements and that there was, basically that was unconditional in this external auditor's report, it did occur to me that we had significant failings in the waste contract at that time, and how has that been assessed against our value for money arrangements? Because I don't think our residents have had value for money from that contract. And, what information have the auditors been given around that? Thank you.
The auditors have access to all our committee reports and council reports. So those are available to them if they require them. The value for money assessment is a bit of a misnomer, if you ask me, because it doesn't really look at value for money. You know, whether the council's achieving the service for the cheapest price or the most efficient thing. What it really looks at is to see, you know, whether we've got sufficient financial resilience, and that sort of thing. Whether reserves are sufficient if there was a disaster or whatever. So I think it's a bit misleading when they call it a value for money assessment. If you read the report at the things they've looked at, they don't actually look at what you and I would call value for money.
So if I can just come back on that, because there is something sort of further down in here that said that it does rely on looking at the internal controls and the internal audits. So have they seen the internal audit report about the waste contract?
I've not spoken to them, asked them specifically if they've read it, but as I said, they do have access to all our internal audit reports, and they are aware of the problem with Serco.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to look and clarify about the fees, and I think we knew when they came back, was it November time, saying that there would be additional fees for this, and we've took it into account, which we're going to have to now approve. Well, we've just had the budget set in. Was that not put in there initially? And then the second one is, we only look as though we've got 35, which is well short of the 43 initially. Have we gone up that high enough for next year's?
I don't know the answer to that question offhand, because
Right.
I've not looked to see what we've put in next year's.
Right,
But
okay.
I think the answer is no, that next year's was the same 35,000, because that's why I've put in there. No, I didn't put it in the recommendation, because I don't know yet whether these are recurring things.
Right.
That's what I'm waiting to see.
Yeah.
So, because if the £6,000 was to deal with a new approach, then you would hope that that might not be needed in the future.
Yeah.
So one of the things that the auditors will be doing next is they'll be coming to tell you what the fees are going to be for 22, 23, and I don't think they've done that yet. So I'll have that conversation with them then. But it was a timing issue, because we'd already done all the papers for the budget when we got this report with the fee increase.
Yeah.
So that's why it's not in the budget.
Can I come back again? As Councillor Ratcliffe said at the beginning, you know, this is for 2021. Our accounts now are coming to the end again. So have we actually put in for this time around again? You know, because we're a year on, behind, shall we say, with an increase, but we've not audited for this year's financial endings because of the increase of that, and we just seem to be on a catch-up with it. And I'm just wondering, surely haven't we got a base that we put in on one side to make note of that? I just can't understand why it hasn't been budgeted in. Sorry, I'm not so sure where we're at with it.
So although the work relates to 2020, 21, that work is carried out in 21, 22. So it gets charged to 21, 22's accounts.
Right.
So we're only kind of 1 year behind. But I take your point about next year's budget. But again, until the auditors tell us what their proposed fees are for 22, 23, we can only go off our past history. And again, it's a timing issue. We've only just been notified of this increase, and it happened after we'd done all the drafting for the budget. So we will obviously flag it, and when we do the revised budget during the year, we'll have to increase it.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Right, is there any more questions for Karen? I'll move then to debate. Councillor Purdy.
Chair, I'll move the recommendations. There are some question marks coming up, I think, inevitably through the pandemic, and I'm quite confident in Karen's handling of this. And I am aware that I think this is the last year of Mazar's contract, and you'll be going out for tender, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes. We're due to go out to tender. We've already, you remember that members agreed to opt in at a council meeting in January.
Yeah.
I've informed PSA of that, and I think the tender process is due to start next week.
And obviously we'll be in that calculation looking at the performance of Mazars, which goes without saying. So I think we have to accept the increases in the recommendations, Chair, so I'll move them.
Thank you. All those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 7, internal audit 22-23 operational plan. Jenny.
Thank you, Chair. This is the draft plan that I'm proposing for 22-23. It's based on you having 2 full-time staff, your senior auditor plus the auditor that we recently recruited. If we remain fully staffed, the attached plan, it does allow us to make some good headway in catching up on the audits that we're behind on from the last 2 years. And if you remember, that's due to the senior auditor spending a lot of time on business grants. So in trying to formulate this plan, we tried to take into account the risks faced by the council, the length of time since we last did the audit, the last audit opinion, because we'll do something more frequently if it's had a limited opinion, and the views of the council management team. If you look at table 2.4, that summarises where we're spending our days. Although there's only 1 day specifically on fraud and corruption, we do actually gear our testing on all our audits to look at where fraud could possibly arise and look at things like separation of duties. So it is actually sort of inbuilt into all of the areas we look at. A similar thing goes for IT. Although we've only got 10 specific days there, there's an IT element in all our systems where we'll look at access and password controls. You might notice I've not included climate change, even though that is a high priority for the council. That's because we looked at it, we did a high-level review last year, and at that point in time, you were appointing a climate change officer. You've now got a climate change officer, so I thought it would be better to let them get in, get a strategy, get things in motion, and then we'll go in 23-4 to have a look how that's all progressing. So this plan will allow me to provide an opinion at the year end for your governance, risk management and control arrangements. It is quite an ambitious plan, so it's likely we probably won't achieve all of it, but if we remain fully staffed, we should be able to achieve a good proportion of it. We have got some contingency days, so if there's any emerging risks or unforeseen circumstances, or we could defer some lower priority areas if there's other higher risk emerging areas. So we will try and look at the high and medium risk areas predominantly first. So the recommendation is that this plan be agreed. Thank you, Chair.
What's any question for Jenny? Councillor Purdy?
Thanks, Jenny. I'm pleased you're optimistic about 15 days less working on refuse collection contract.
Okay.
Or is that optimistic? Seriously, how many days are you having to put into this contract? And some of the gaps, I'm just querying why we've not got anything. You've explained why there's no planned days on climate change, but there's 1 or 2 other gaps as well in 2023. Forgive me, my screen's just gone silly. So procurement, risk management, there's another one somewhere. Wonder why there's gaps in those planned days. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. We don't have the resource to look at every area every year. So what we do is risk assess it, and so really high priority areas we try and look at every year, although some of them have slipped to every 2 years. Yeah. For medium risk areas, we try and look at every 2 to 3 years, and then for some really low risk priority areas, which are perhaps low value, low number of transactions, low risk of reputational damage, we'll only look at them maybe even once every 5 years. Mm-hmm. So we have put some days in for the waste management contract.
It's contingency days, yeah.
It's difficult to predict how long we'll have to spend on that, but obviously if we need to spend longer, we will spend longer, and we'll knock out the lower priority area audits.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Cruz?
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Purdy's touched on it, but I wanted to dig a tiny little bit deeper on the waste management contract. we're going from 30 to 15 days, and I'm just curious about what the scope of that audit's likely to be. Is it just our processes, or is it also going to go over the boundary into how Serco are operating? And do we partner with Serco's internal audit team, and are they going to do an internal audit on themselves so that we can see how the whole thing fits together? Because I think it was quite illuminating when we had that report. And for me, this could be quite useful. And I'm also wondering about the timing of that report, when we're likely to do the audit.
In terms of what we would look at for internal audit, I was anticipating that we would follow up the recommendations that we made this time, looking at our own internal processes and our system of monitoring the contract, what we're doing, which may also highlight some weaknesses of Serco, but we wouldn't directly approach Serco and go into Serco and deal with their staff. In terms of timing, I think we'll have to liaise with management, because we've obviously got to give time for the recommendations for them to feel that they have been implemented and move forward. So probably maybe 6 months we'd go in and have a look how things are progressing and do a further report.
Thank you. Just an extra question on a different topic. It's health and safety, so not a question around the days. It was more around whether we go to other partner authorities and see what sort of audits they're doing and what their findings are. Obviously, people, key consideration. If we can learn something from another authority, we can implement a fix with our authority quicker. So it's using other information to, because the risks will be very similar if it's Amber Valley or somewhere else. So I'm just wondering if we partner with other people.
I think that's probably one of the benefits you've got of having myself, because I'm part of the audit consortium. So I undertake the audits for Chesterfield, North East Derbyshire and Bolsover District Council as well. So we have health and safety in all of their audit plans. So what we do between the 4 councils is we share any findings that we have. We have the same sort of test schedules, because you're right, they've all got the sort of similar sorts of risks. So we look at the same sorts of areas, pick up on the same sort of things, and if one authority's found one thing, we will share that. We have team meetings that Derbyshire Dale staff are part of, and we discuss things like that and share what we can.
That's brilliant. It's good to know. Thank you. Councillor Ratcliffe. Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I want to use this opportunity just to make a comment, if I may, and there will be a question following. I think one of the things that I'm acutely aware of, and I'm quite sure others will be too, is that this committee plays a very significant role in the audit processes, not only the internal audit, but the external one too, in that, we keep a close watch on things, and we bring them out. I mention them as necessary. It was interesting to pick up in the Mazars letter that they felt that there were no weaknesses perceived in the committee structure of the council in respect of decision making. I mean, that's good to know that I'm doing a reasonable job here. It's interesting that Councillor Cruz brought out this business of the audit over the waste management contract, because I think that's important that we don't lose sight of that. But I think it's extremely important too that we don't lose sight of the leisure contract and its management. And this is where I'm being a little tangential, if you like. I thought when we awarded this contract, there were going to be opportunities for us to evaluate how this was going, not only in terms of income and figures, etc., but the general things too. I can't remember us ever having that on an agenda, a presentation of freedom, leisures, management systems and outcomes. Can I make a plea that perhaps in the not too distant future that we do have this and that we are given an opportunity to do a little bit of inspection and scrutiny over this. How long have they had this contract now? Is it 2 years, 3 years?
Yes, Karen, yeah.
I think the leisure contract started in 2018.
I'm anticipating what you're going to say, and so I know this is about the other things, but that's why I say I was being a bit tangential, and I want just to use the opportunity because it appeared in that table to make my point, even though I know what you're going to say, and I fully accept what you're.
I was just going to say that I can pass your comments on to Ashley Watts, whose service leisure is in.
Quite happy with that, Mike, yeah? You happy with that? Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask a question about or make a comment about that particular contract and the fact that you've got 14 days in for to assess the contract management there. So I think I took that to mean that you were going to be looking at that in some detail, and that the time was there to do that. So the one I wanted to bring up with you really was car park income. And I noticed that this year you've devoted 4 days to the review of car park income, and that was in a time when we were suffering from poor telecommunications to the machines, which was leading to lost payments due to lost card payments because the machines couldn't communicate with the card services companies. And I wondered whether the fact that there's nothing in for this year means that you believe that those problems have been resolved, or are they still ongoing?
When we undertook the audit in 21-22, we made a number of recommendations that were accepted and management were implementing. So we sort of follow it up through our recommendation follow-up procedure. So we obviously have to get a balance of what we can't do everything every year. So we did decide to leave that until next year. But we will follow up the recommendations we made, which you get reported on every 6 months. So if those haven't been actioned, they'll keep being raised until they have.
No more questions. I'll move into debate. Councillor Purdy.
Chair, I'll move it. I just want to make 2 comments, if I may, in response to Councillor Ratcliffe. I think you made a very valid point, Mike, about the scrutiny, inverted commas, of freedom leisure. So I'll pick that up with the Chief Exec. I think that I need to go back to the contract, and I think we need to see, I think Karen's nodding, we need to see what was set up as far as our involvement was concerned, but I'll promise to look into that. I have asked the Chief Exec to look at setting up a working plan for our car park review, and the next working plan to look at our toilet provision. So I'm hoping that that can happen soon. Again, we're looking at having to have officer capacity to be able to do that. Ash has only just come back off sick leave and got a load more on his plate. So move the recommendations, Chair, after that little narrative.
Good.
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair, Gary, could I ask whether that's going to include sort of payment for you, including in the car parking charges for the toilets, that sort of option, as well as other things?
I've sent the Chief Exec my ideas of what I want it to look at, and it does include that. It's also to look at commercial prospects as well as climate change, solar panels and so forth. So a wide-ranging piece of work, which the Chief Exec's sort of balking at, because I know his officers are pulled left, right and centre at the moment, but it's something I think we should do.
That's okay. That's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Unanimous again. Well done. Jenny, if you want to leave, you may do so. Okay, moving on to item 8, arrears for write-off. Karen.
Thank you, Chair. So the position on arrears as at 7th of March is shown in the table 1 of the report. I'm pleased to report that there are no write-offs over £10,000 for members to approve. And that's the first occasion that that's happened in the time that I've been bringing these reports since 2014. It did take me by surprise because given the financial climate at the moment, I expected arrears to be increasing. Having said that, we have had additional funds via the County Council. So the government funds called the Household Support Fund passed to us via the County Council that we have used to write off arrears in cases of severe hardship. So those have not been included in this report for members to approve. Although I don't think any were over £10,000, they weren't that significant. And I also think that there's possibly a lag in, because we didn't step up recovery action and didn't start taking cases to court until September last year. I think there's possibly a lag in the cases coming to that decision as to whether to write them off or not. So it's possible that in the next report, next September, we might see that increase coming forward. But at the moment, the write-offs that have been approved under my delegated authority are well within the budgetary provisions. So I just need to ask this time that the report be noted. Thank you.
I move to questions. Councillor Hughes, you had a...
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the provisions, the line provisions for doubtful debts to 1st of April 2021, is that what we are approving at this stage then? That all of these debts would fall within that provision, would they?
Yes, we're not asking you to approve the provision because that's
No,
an
that's
amount that's
been,
calculated at the end of each financial year.
Yeah.
What we would ask you to approve normally is any write-offs that would come out
Right,
of
okay.
that.
Okay.
But I only ask members to approve write-offs over £10,000.
But the amounts in the table above would come out of that
Yes,
that line.
So they're all well within the provisions.
And then are the lines below just for information then?
Yes, just so you can see the past history and whether whether the amount of arrears is a lot more or less.
Okay, so the amount the arrears that have been incurred are only about a quarter of the provision.
That's right.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. No more questions. I'll move straight to debate. Somebody like to propose it? The report? Councillor Bull?
Yes, it's nice to know, as Karen had possibly having the shock. I think we all have the shock, but we might just be doing the calm before the storm when everybody starts calculating what they've got and what they haven't got, as we are behind with our audits and the like. So, but for the report as it is at the moment, then I'm quite well prepared to propose that we take as noted. Thank you.
Councillor Fletcher?
I'm happy to second it, Chair. But I do just wonder, I thought we were looking at officer time and commitment and reports to be just noted. Now, I don't know whether being a financial report, we're bound in this manner to accept the report as it is, but I would have thought a simple statement and information going out under the members' portal would have been sufficient. As I say, I'm thinking about officer time, and it's time we took a serious look at that because we are overstaffed, we are committed. There are lots of other things to do, and yet we come with a report where thankfully, we haven't got any this year, and I take the point we may have after things change. But nevertheless, our staff are still worried about the time they spend on report writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. That's been ready.
Councillor Steve, we are working on it on the Constitution Working Group, and it has been flagged up. And see, Councillor Ratcliffe has his hand up. It's something we definitely should be doing. Don't need to come here. I quite agree.
Mike.
It's just that I agree to a very large extent about what Steve has just said, and I don't want him to take what I say too critically. However, I'm always aware of write-offs being money that, you know, we are saying it's not coming to us, and I feel that somehow, even though it's a very small amount in the larger scheme, you know, it's only a fraction of percentages in terms of the council tax income and revenue. Nevertheless, if you're not careful, you can get complacent. You know, we may not have to take decisions any longer over amounts under 10,000, but those amounts can add up. The one good thing in the report here is that those amounts appear to have been steadily decreasing. If you look back to 2018-19, it was 245,000. The total write-off 2021 was 134, a substantial decrease. I put this to some extent, you know, in that category, but I always find slightly irksome or irritating, as it were, when I hear that high street department stores, immediately they put their stock out, they write off about 2 or 3% straight away because they just know it's going to get nicked. Well, you know, I'm not saying this is the same situation by any means at all. However, I'm just cautious. So I take what Steve has said. I don't care how you do it, but I want to be informed of what the write-offs are each year.
Thank you for your comment, Mike.
Can I just assure Mike that I don't take offence of anything?
Sure you do, Steve.
It's just that years ago, well, 1985, in this council, it proves times change, because we sat round this desk and we were talking about Joe Bloggs owing about 98 quid in council rent. Yeah. And it was a bit pointless then, because you knew you couldn't retain some of it. That's right. But there must be a better way, that was the point I was making, to inform everybody and make staff less committed to, you know, putting out long reports.
And it's, if I may, Chair, it's a valid point, and just to strengthen what I've said, please, Councillor Ratcliffe, there would be proposals from the Constitution Working Group, so don't take them as read. You know, I think there'll have to be a selective process, which comes to council, which goes to committee, what gets circulated to members, so on and so forth. So that will get circulated to councillors for decision making.
Thank you very much. Okay, the report's been proposed and seconded. All those in favour? Unanimous again. Thank you very much.
I was at the meeting, so I'll move them, Chair.
Exclusion of the press and the public. Can I have a proposal for that? Councillor Purdy, Councillor Ball. Thank you. All those in favour? Get to this with it and then we'll stop that. Okay. That, all those unanimous, thank you very much.